Now that we've got our layout component put together, we can start working on the actual header for our application. Inside the layout file, the first thing I'm going to do is to delete the h1 that we were using for the footer. Our application does not have a footer, so I'm going to remove that because we just really had it in there for demonstration purposes. So what we really want to do is replace this h1 right here. Now, as before, we don't really want to have to do all the styling for a header manually. It'd be a lot better if we could figure out some component inside of Semantic UI that we can make use of and get all that styling done for us for free. So let's go look at the documentation and see if we can't find something that tells us about what we can do here. Before we look at the documentation, one quick reminder, we essentially are trying to make a nav bar that has our logo on the left and then two buttons over on the right. So that's what we really want to make here. Over at the Semantic UI documentation, on the left-hand side, you will see a section labeled as header, but this is a little bit misleading. This is a component that is used to generate a text header. So if you look at the examples, yeah, you'll see right here like page headers. So it's showing you like big text. So this is not really what we're looking for. To be honest, Semantic UI really buries the documentation for what we're trying to make. Like we're trying to make essentially a navigation bar. And they really bury the documentation for this thing inside the left-hand nav here. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of hunting. On the left-hand side, I'm gonna find collections and then menu. So this is essentially what we really wanna make. We want to make a navigation bar. They call it a menu internally. Even on this page though, the type of nav bar that we're trying to make is still a little bit buried. So I'm gonna give you a nice easy way to find this thing. If you scroll down a little bit to the first section right here, you'll eventually see this right-hand box appear. If we click on content and then menu, here we go. So this thing right here, this is what you and I want to make, right? We want to have the big logo on the left-hand side and then two little buttons on the right-hand side. So let's look at the code for this thing and get a sense of how to make it. All right, so we're going to import menu from Semantic UI React. We're then going to place a top-level menu component. Then inside there, we can have these separate little menu.item things. And more importantly, for the right-hand navigation bar, we can make a menu.menu kind of like subsection that has a position of right. And then we can place more components inside that. So this little nested menu.menu thing with a position of right is specifically to get us this right-hand group of buttons over here. So essentially, we're going to end up placing the top menu. We'll place our logo inside that, and then we'll place a menu.menu that's going to have our two additional buttons. And for us, those two additional buttons are going to take the user to the big list of campaigns we have, and then the form that they can use to create a new individual campaign. All right, so let's give this a shot. Now, looking at this code snippet right here, it definitely looks like there's going to be a lot of markup that you and I are going to have to write. And I think that maybe that would be markup that we should keep out of this layout.js file. It would be really nice if we could keep this layout nice and simple, as opposed to having it eventually grow to be very large in size. So I'm going to make another component inside of my components directory, and this one is going to be intended to be used solely as the header of our application. All right, so I'm going to make a new file inside of components, and I'm going to call this thing header.js. Then inside of here, we'll place some boilerplate for a React component. So again, I'll say import React from React. I'm going to import, let's see, what do we need here? We need menu from Semantic UI React. And do we need anything else? I don't think so, according to this example right here. All right, then inside of here, we'll make a functional component and immediately export it. So I will say export default and then place my arrow function. Then I will return, and we're going to place a couple of different things inside here. So I'm going to do my top level menu. I'm going to right away do that kind of subsection for the right hand side. And remember that we do that by placing a menu.menu with a position of right. So that's going to be the content that goes to the right-hand side of the nav bar. So I'll say menu.menu, and I'll give it a position of right. And then I'll close off the menu.menu. All right, so next up, we can start placing some individual items inside of here. I think that we want these menu.item things, and we're going to make one for every individual little button that we end up needing. Notice how the menu.item has a couple of different properties tied to it. It looks like there's a name, an active thing, some on-click, a couple of different items on here. Let's first start off by just placing the menu.item and not worrying about any of those additional properties. We'll then come back and maybe add them on as required. So back over here, I'll say menu.item. And this should have the text. What are we using here? We're calling this crowdcoin. And then we'll place two more inside of the right-hand subsection. So I'll say menu.item. And that's supposed to have the text campaigns. And then underneath that, we had said that this should have a little plus button inside of it that a user can click to go and create a new campaign. So traditionally, whenever you want to show a plus like that, you usually use an actual dedicated icon. But just to keep things simple for us, we'll just use a single symbol plus, right? Nice and straightforward. Okay, so this header looks somewhat reasonable right now. I'm going to save this file, and then I'll go back to the layout.js file, and we'll use the header inside of it. So back inside of layout.js, at the top, I'm going to import header from ./header, and it's ./ because that's in the same directory. And then I'll replace this silly h1 that we had previously with the header that you and I just made. Okay, so let's now go test this out in the browser and see how we are doing. All right, so not that bad. We've got the text at the top and the two buttons over here at the right-hand side. Now there's definitely something that seems a little bit off about our application right now. You'll notice that all the content spans from the very left-hand side of the document to the very right-hand side. And that's definitely not what we probably want our application to be. We probably want to have some like margin or gutter on the left and right-hand side. So I think there's definitely still a little bit of work we have to do here. Let's continue with that in the next video.